The Strain Season 2, Episode 5, Quick and Painless. Now, it really sucks that I was a week behind on this episode because personally, I think this is my favorite episode so far in the season. And it really has me excited for the next episode, which I'm honestly going to get into because since I'm so far behind, it's like I might as well just watch both episodes and do both reviews together so I'm at least caught up. But I love this episode. I thought it was really, really fun to see how the characters really changed in this episode. Like everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but most of the characters seem actually, yeah, pretty much everybody branched out in some way in this episode. Aside from F's son, aside from Zach, every other character, like all the adults, basically met new characters. They interacted with people they've never met before. They've done stuff to kind of change the way the city is going to work, really, especially with Vet, Dutch, and Nora, because they work like, hey, you don't have to quarantine people for 3 days. I can figure it out in like, 1 to 2 hours. Vet and Dutch went to help, and they kind of gave the, like the SWAT commander, like, hey, silver UV lights work. So that was kind of cool, and they're probably going to end up working with, like the government more now. And of course, F is off, in Washington D.C. He actually made it, and his portion of the episode was without a doubt my favorite because I personally felt more intense. I feel like more tense watching that scene than I have ever watching them go through dealing with the vampires. Like I knew he wouldn't die because there was obviously no chance of that happening. But someone in the show being captured is very different than them dying. Like him being busted and then they have to find some way to save him, even though he's the main character. It's still like it's not guaranteed that he's gonna get out of this scot free. And he could have been busted and still, been like thrown off, and then he has to like basically find his way, to DC. That would be a little bit weird if they did it that way, where he did have to jump off the train. But it's like he had this intense moment. It's like people, is someone gonna recognize him and stuff? And I really enjoyed watching that because I didn't know if he'd be caught or not. Like them fighting the vampires and stuff is like, well, they're not gonna die, no big deal. Like that being arrested at the end of the last episode, it was very surprising. But with F, he's like actually already considered a criminal because they didn't want him solving the vampire issue in the city. So he cuts his hair, which finally gave me the answer to why he was bald in Ant-Man. Because as soon as he went to the guy and he was like, you've kind of been all over the news. You might want to change your appearance. I'm like, he's gonna cut his hair off, and that's why he was bald in Ant-Man. For anyone who hasn't seen it, or if you haven't, somehow haven't seen the commercials, the guy who plays F is the main villain in Ant-Man. And I was like, why is he bald in this? I was like, I wasn't sure if it was like a Marvel thing, like that character needed to be bald just to fit in. That's kind of how the character is made in the comics or whatever. But I didn't even think about the fact that maybe it was for the show. I honestly thought it would have been in between seasons, and that's why he had the time because it's a full motion picture. But the fact that he cut his hair in this episode kind of showed like, oh, he cut his hair in this episode, and he was filming, not only Ant-Man, but he was still filming The Strain at the same time. And that's why when he was filming for Ant-Man, he was bald because he had to do that in in The Strain. So it finally gave me that answer because that had been blowing my mind ever since I saw the trailer. I was like, why is he bald? Like it was so weird to me. It was weird seeing him like that in the movie. But it answered the question. It was like as soon as they showed him, I was like, and now he's the villain from Ant-Man. But he changes his appearance. He goes off on his own, and I love that scene between him and Nora where she's like telling him like if anything happens, you need to be able to just drop everything and run. And he tells her like, you're right and I'm wrong, but I need you for this because we're partners. He kind of needed that support, and he needed his family, who was now mostly specifically Nora and Zach. And she's like, I'm making the rules this time, and I love that. It was like she normally supports him and stuff because even though it might kind of suck, it's like, well, it's helping things out. But in this case, she knew it was like, you need to be below the radar, just you by yourself. If anything does go down, kind of like in this episode, everything's totally fine because instead of one person being recognized, you got a group of people constantly getting up and walking away and stuff. It looks a little different, and also just the ID stuff and them having like government IDs and things like that. But I love that little scene. It was very very minor, but she's like, I'm making the rules, or I'm calling the shots on this one. So he goes it alone. He has his moment with his son, and his son, kind of has a nice moment with him at least. At least in the middle ground, he's like, personally think you should stay too, Dad. So I thought that was a nice little moment. But he makes it to DC. He does end up running into the guy. I knew it was gonna happen once he got out of the bathroom. I figured. At first, when the guy knocked on the door, of course, I thought it was him. And then he gets out of that and it's totally fine. They have the second person looking at him because they had the guy who's sitting in the seat. I was like, okay, he's gonna tell the cops because he's gonna recognize him. So of course, he got up and left. Then we have the cop who actually checks him, and he almost screwed himself up because he was like, he was getting frustrated, like, I'm one of the first people to figure this out. And so, he does that. The very first guy that checked his ID, he's like, can I see your driver's license? And he has to say, like, I don't drive, which I guess thank goodness for the Washington, D.C. thing, it kind of works because they do have, like the metro system there. So it's much easier for him to say that, like, oh, I just catch the train all over the place because it's that type of, it's that type of city. So, it was just really crazy. It's like, man, he just goes over every time. It was like people just kept looking back like, and it just kept freaking me out because they kept showing it for every single person he talked to. They would always give him the look. He would look back at them. They're looking at him, and it's like, oh man, like, is he gonna get caught? And then of course he runs into the guy. They fight. He gets punched in the nuts. I'm pretty sure that guy hit him right in the nuts after he was on the ground. But they have their whole fight, and then he throws him off a train. He might not be dead. I don't know. He could be like seriously injured, but not dead. And then that would just kind of add to the issues that F is going to have once people realize who he is. I, of course, was freaked out at the very end because I thought the woman would recognize him. I'm like, this is the final moment. But he does escape, and I just really love that entire moment with him because it was intense, where it could have gone either way because they aren't killing the character. He's just being captured. And of course, they'd have to write something else where he found a way to escape. But it's like, I really don't know. Like, there could be a way where he gets captured and does escape, or he might escape. But I don't know. Like, that's why it was sort of a what-if situation. Because, like I said, with the vampires, we all know they aren't going to kill the characters off. So it was fairly simple. Except for in this episode, when Dutch is just like, I still mix them up. I keep screwing that up. The guy, Fett, because I was calling him Vet, but Fett, I remember now. He looks in that hole. When he did that, I'm like, I was freaking out in that scene because they go in and he's stabbing through the wall, which is a pretty cool scene. And he was like, it was like he had a spider sense or something, like he's filling on the wall and stuff. And I thought that was just kind of funny. But when he's stabbing through, and then he looks in and he almost gets hit, but he does a nice little dodge, and then Dutch just slices the thing off and he just stabs it, and it blinks after. I thought the SWAT guy was just gonna shoot it in the head. I thought they would notice that, but excuse me, they didn't really touch on that. It just kind of blinked sideways, and then that was kind of it. But that was a cool little scene. I thought that was pretty sweet, and he was just like stabbing into the wall trying to kill this thing, and then they had the little moment with the elevator, and Dutch just drops the silver grenade, and the cop's like, "Oh, well, now I get the silver thing." So I thought that was just a nice, funny moment. Of course, the beginning of the episode was really cool because the feelers kind of got upgraded in this episode. I didn't know that they had super speed and they were just like jumping around like Spider-Man. They're like flying all through the room and stuff. They take one of the cops out, and none of them. I think one of them got nicked, and that was the one that got sung to by Kelly. That was still the beginning of the episode, but it was just like, holy crap! I didn't know that they could do that. I thought they have their awareness is heightened and that's it. But they're young and agile, and it's like they're faster because they're young. So they have the speed that I guess typical vampires have with super speed. So I thought that was kind of awesome. It's like, they're outrunning like 2 machine guns and like shotguns and all sorts of stuff. They're, going in circles all around the room, jumping all over the place. Even especially the ending where the kid goes up through the vent and they're on the stairwell, and it was such a compact little area. And I just love that scene. I think that was my favorite part because it was such an enclosed space. But it just shows really how fast they're moving because these people have been trained, for years to use these weapons with pinpoint accuracy, and they couldn't get this thing in, and it was like basically just going, straight in front of them and then kind of up into a circle, and he couldn't get it, like no matter what he did, and he's just holding it down, spraying basically, and he couldn't really touch it. Got like a little scratch on it. And I just love that scene. It made him even deadlier. So it was exciting to see that little upgrade. Like I said, I loved all the characters kind of branching out. Even Satrakian goes and he ends up we get to see like the old guy who we're not the old guy but the old character who basically just steals stuff. And he tries to of course steal the watches and he gets a sword pulled on him, which I love that scene. And they have it where he's like, okay, well, he's talking to Satraki and is like, I might have, I have someone who kind of looks into all this crazy stuff, so, I'll let you know if I find anything out. And I thought that was it. I thought it was like, alright, so he's got a lead on it, that's pretty cool. And then we get Palmer, like, basically at the end of this episode, it's like two just, like, out of nowhere scenes, which I love, like, just two really great moments. And one was Palmer and his secretary, and they have, a couple of scenes. And the priest comes up to him and he's like, that certain object you're looking for, which I have to believe is the Lumen Book. He's like, it's possibly going to show up pretty soon. I thought he'd given up the search for it, but apparently that was a lie. And so, he kind of has things out there going on. So I don't know if it's the same contact or how that's going to play out, but based on what they did, it's like Satrakian's here, Palmer's here, and they're going to come to a head again. And I don't know how that's going to play out because of course, Satrakian's actual last scene in the episode, which I guess it was closer towards the end of the this episode, he does find out that Palmer's former partner actually is going to help. Well, I guess he wasn't his partner, but the guy that worked for him, he decided that he came back into town. He's like, I'm going to help you guys out. So that's going to be pretty cool. But they're going to be headed towards this book at the same time, possibly through the same contract. And I just enjoyed that scene, and they had it where and I love this scene when she's like, what was that about? And he's like, oh, nothing. And it just made me laugh because it's like, this priest is being really weird and suspicious. Like, that certain thing you're looking for might be in town and stuff. And it's like, it's, nothing. Like, you just can't say stuff like that. And it was just really funny. And then they have a little scene where it seemed like they were about to, like, be together. Like, they were about to end up in a relationship or something, which is kind of interesting. But, then they have, of course, like, the building on fire in the background. It's just the top of the building is just burning. So, that was just there, and it was really weird. And, like, holy crap, there's just a building burning in the background. But they have their little moment and stuff. And it's like, okay, well, that works out. Then we have, like, the actual seemingly ending scene where, F has the whole moment, he gets to DC, and it goes off. I'm like, this is a good episode. And then this extra, it was almost like a Marvel movie where it's like an extra credit scene comes on. This plane lands. These random people are introduced. I'm like, okay, well, who are these two guys? They obviously are involved. It's automatic that they're involved. And then they get to the gate. I'm like, okay. I was thinking maybe it was another master, even though they did show that those were the other masters. And then, of course, there's like the evil master, I guess. I thought maybe that's what this is. And then it's not that. It's some sleek, like, sword-wielding ninja type character coming in with, like, a sword that has a bone for a hilt. And I don't know how this sword's going to look. I have to assume it's going to look kind of cool. I'd love it if it was in the shape of a katana, because that would obviously be cool with me. But he comes in, he's all cloaked up and stuff. And he's very similar to the group that we've seen before, who unfortunately are, all dead now, which really, really sucks because I thought they'd been in a lot longer. So he comes in, who knows if he's good or if he's bad. He has a sword and a set of guns. He has people that work for him. He had the two people on the plane, and he had the one woman that picked him up who knew he was coming to town. So I have no idea what to expect from this. I'm hoping he's a good guy because I think that will lead to some cool scenes. Because even if he was bit, I don't think anything would happen to him. I would assume, like, they haven't really gotten into that type of stuff yet. If someone who isn't controlled by the evil master is, bit by one of his infected, or one he has under his control, does he now have control of that person who was formerly, free? So we might get into that sort of concept. We just have to see who this character is. That's why I'm really excited for the next episode, because this guy just came out of nowhere. He has clearly, like I said, a sword with a bone hilt. So, not a clue, but I'm incredibly excited. I'd have to say this is definitely my favorite episode so far. Only five in, and there's been some really cool episodes this season, but this is definitely my favorite. Like, all the characters have kind of branched out. F is in DC. Hopefully that works out. Who knows? Even if it doesn't, though, we've already seen the changes thanks to Fett, Dutch, and Nora getting involved with the cops and the female politician. And so now that they have all these answers, it's like, all right, we can clear them out faster. We might be able to use these people to help us, clear things out and get some more info. So Satrakian, basically found a new partner that they actually did convince. The book's coming into play fairly soon. So there's a lot that was done in this episode that I really, really loved. And then, of course, just a crazy ending scene that just, like, blew my mind. Like, what the heck is happening? So I love this episode. Of course, I do want to know what you guys thought about it, even though this is fully a week, but more than a full week behind now. But I still want to know what you guys thought about it. Thanks for checking this out. Even though this is super late, but please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and even though the answer may have been given in the next episode, I still want to know your initial reactions to that ending scene, as well as what happened with F in this episode, because those personally were my two biggest moments, were F actually getting to DC, and now he has the opportunity to get to the higher ups and tell them we have a potential cure, an actual cure. So who knows how that's gonna play out? I don't know if he's gonna get busted, which I feel like he might not. Now that I mean, he was all over the news. I'm sure it wasn't just like in New York; it's international. Like, this is the guy that basically kind of did this in a sense, sort of. So I'm not sure if that's gonna work out, but I want to know your reactions to F's adventure and, of course, this ending scene, because obviously I loved them both. But like I said, I want to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.